Top 14 Longines Watches, the complete 2026 price guide. Have you heard about this watch brand? They have been building extraordinary movements since 1832, and their prices make every comparable Swiss brand look overpriced. And yes, I am talking about Longines. Most people know the Longines name. Far fewer know what Longines actually makes, but I'll bridge that gap. This is a guide to 14 of the best watches in Longines' current catalog, from $1,400 to nearly $5,000. Every entry gets the soul of its history, what makes it technically special, and the one flaw you should know before you buy. The watch at the top of this list does something that used to cost $10,000 and does it in titanium for under $5,000. Let's start from the bottom and build. Watch 14 LA Grande Classique, $1,100 to $1,300. This is the watch that introduced more people to Longines than any other model in the catalog. The Le Grande Classique launched in 1992 and became a global bestseller for one simple reason. It looked like it should cost more than it did. An ultra-thin case, often under 5 millimeters, with a design so restrained that it approaches invisibility. No seconds hand on many versions, no crown guard. The lugs are part of the case back, which means the watch sits completely flat against the wrist without any gap. That last detail sounds like engineering jargon, but it's actually the thing you notice immediately when you put the watch on. Most watches sit slightly raised at the lugs, with visible light underneath. The Le Grande Classique lies flat, like it belongs there. The flaw this watch has is that it's almost exclusively quartz. For a brand with this mechanical history, the Le Grande Classique is the fashion outlier. If you're looking for a Longines with a beating heart inside, look further up this list. This one has no crown guards and no seconds hand, specifically because Longines believes that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. The design is not incomplete. It is deliberately stripped to what a dress watch actually needs to do: tell the time, on the wrist, invisibly. Which brings us to the next watch on this list. Watch 13 Dolce Vita Automatic Art Deco, $1,700 to $2,000. Rectangular watch cases have always been harder to make than round ones. The movement needs to be shaped differently, the crystal needs precise cutting, and the case requires more finishing work per surface. This is why Cartier charges so much for the tank. It's not only heritage, it's the engineering cost of the shape. The Dolce Vita Automatic is Longines, acknowledging this comparison directly and making a case that they can occupy the same category for significantly less money. At $1,700 to $2,000 against the Cartier Tank Automatic at around $9,000 plus, the Dolce Vita offers a genuine rectangular automatic movement. It also offers a flinke dial, which is an enamel-like guilloche texture that's applied with depth and texture over the surface. Overall, the sensibility of an Art Deco wristwatch has earned its aesthetic rather than borrowed it. The name means the sweet life. This is the watch Longines makes for people who appreciate elegance the way the 20s understood it. It's also the official watch of the Longines Masters equestrian events, which connects it to a world of precision sport and high society competition that suits the watch's personality well. This watch looks unique, but it isn't perfect. The automatic movement makes the Dolce Vita thicker than its quartz sibling. Rectangular watches are supposed to be slim by definition. The automatic adds height in a category where height is the enemy. If you want the flattest possible version of this watch, the quartz is the honest choice. If you want a mechanical heartbeat inside Art Deco geometry, accept the extra millimeter or two. Let's move on the 12th watch. Watch 12, Conquest 38 millimeters, Sports Chic, $2,075 to $2,400. The Conquest line is the oldest named product line in the entire Longines catalog. It launched in 1954. The same year as Rolex's GMT Master. While Rolex was designing for pilots, Longines was building the Conquest as a general-purpose sports watch for people who needed reliability in active use. The 2026 iteration, at 38 millimeters, has found the right size. 38 millimeters is the measurement that the current collector community keeps returning to as the sweet spot. It is large enough for legibility, small enough to transition between contexts. With a caseback that seals properly and a movement that keeps honest time, this is Longines doing the Rolex Oyster Perpetual argument at a price that requires no justification. The specific detail worth calling out is the 2026 Champagne dial version. This dial is engineered to shift its apparent color depending on the temperature of the light hitting it. It is silver in cool daylight, gold in warm incandescent light. This is not a photographic trick. It's a manufacturing choice that makes the watch look different in different rooms, always in a way that flatters the context. But the butterfly clasp on this model has no micro-adjustment positions. If your wrist swells in summer heat, which most wrists do, the watch will feel tight in the afternoon, and you have no way to add a ½ millimeter of space without removing a link. For a daily wear sports watch, this is a real limitation that should have been solved. Will this stop you from getting the watch? Let me know as I talk about Watch 11. Watch Hydro Conquest, 2026 generation, refresh, $2,200 to $2,400. The Hydro Conquest is Longines' volume diver, the one you see most often, the one that appears on the wrists of people who want a serious diver without the conversation about whether they bought the right one. It has been in continuous production since 2007 and has gone through 4 major updates. The 2026 version deserves attention specifically for what changed. Longines thinned the case and added a high taper bracelet, meaning the bracelet links angle inward from the case toward the clasp, giving the watch a more tapered and elegant profile on the wrist. This is the difference between a watch that looks like a tool and a watch that looks like a luxury sports piece. The 2026 Hydro Conquest crosses that line. It no longer reads as a dive watch, trying to be a dress watch. It reads as a dive watch that happens to look at home in a business setting. The recognizable signature, the Arabic numerals at 12, 9, and 6 o'clock. These numbers make the Hydro Conquest identifiable from across a room in a way that most dive watches aren't. Most divers look identical from a distance. The Hydro Conquest does not. However, it has a resale problem. The Hydro Conquest loses roughly 30% of its retail value within the first 2 years of purchase. This is a documented pattern on the secondary market. If you intend to wear it and keep it, this is irrelevant. If you think of watches as investments, the Hydro Conquest is not for you. But should people buy watches because of resale value or because of the satisfaction of owning a watch? Think about that as I take you to the moon. Watch 10 Master Collection Moon Phase, 40 millimeters, 3,000 to 4,000, 400 depending on version. The moon phase complication is one of the oldest mechanical display complications in watchmaking. It shows the current phase of the moon on a rotating disc, a small disc with 2 moons painted on it, rotating behind an aperture in the dial, completing one cycle every 29.5 days. To make a moon phase watch accurately, you need a gear train that represents the lunar cycle, 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 3 seconds. If the gear isn't precise enough, the moon phase display drifts from the actual moon's phase over time. Cheap moon phase watches drift by a day every couple of years. Good ones drift by a day every decade. Very good ones hold accuracy for much longer. The Master Collection Moon Phase at its price range offers this complication alongside a date function and a dial with barleycorn texture. The dial is a subtle diagonal pattern that gives the dial depth and catches light in a way that a flat dial never does. At this price, with these features, in a movement that keeps honest time, this is one of the most efficient value propositions in Longines' entire catalog. But many users don't like that it has 30 meters of water resistance. This is splash resistance only. In heavy rain, you'd be advised to cover the watch or remove it. For a watch marketed as a daily dress piece, this is a legitimate limitation that the brand has accepted in exchange for the thinner case profile. Know it before you buy it. If you can look past the poor water resistance, the collection is available in over 100 different configurations, dial colors, case materials, strap options. No other dress watch in the world offers this level of customization from the manufacturer. If you want a specific combination, Longines can almost certainly build it, just as it did this next watch. Watch 9 Heritage Classic Sector Dial, $2,750 on a leather strap, and $2,950 for the beads of rice steel bracelet version. In the 30s, watchmakers designed what they called scientific dials. Usually dials are divided into clean geometric sectors, each quadrant handling a different piece of information. The logic was functional. Doctors using stop seconds for pulse timing, researchers tracking elapsed time. They needed the dial to be readable at a glance without ambiguity. Decoration was not the point. Clarity was. The Heritage Classic Sector dial revives this concept. The dial is multi-layered, different textures across different sections, with brushed and matte finishes that direct the eye toward different functions. The result is a watch that looks significantly more expensive than it is. This is not because of ornamentation, but because of the discipline and craft required to produce multiple finishes in proximity without them competing. Collectors call this the Longines Calatrava, a reference to the Patek Philippe Calatrava, the gold standard of Swiss dress watch design. The comparison is not about equivalence. It's about the category of experience, a watch that rewards quiet attention, that looks better the closer you look, that doesn't announce itself loudly. And speaking of not announcing loudly, this watch has a solid caseback. You cannot see the movement. For a first-time buyer who is excited about owning a mechanical watch, the inability to see the movement through the back is a genuine disappointment. The movement inside, the L888-4, is a legitimate caliber. It simply does not receive a display window. Let's talk about the sibling of a watch I have covered next. Watch 8 Hydrocon Quest GMT, 41mm, 2,675 to 2,775, depending on bracelet. The Longines Hydro Conquest has always been a strong diver. The GMT variant turns it into something more interesting. A true dual-purpose tool watch that tracks 2 time zones simultaneously while maintaining the structural credentials of a genuine 300-meter diver. Most GMT dive watches at this price point compromise one or the other. The dive watch that adds GMT is usually weaker on the diving side. The GMT watch that adds dive credentials is usually giving you 30 or 50 meters and calling it a diver. The Hydro Conquest GMT holds 300 meters of water resistance while keeping the case under 12 millimeters thick. This is genuinely engineering work in a category where complication typically adds thickness. The ceramic bezel on this model carries both a GMT scale and a dive scale simultaneously, 12 and 24 hours on the outer ring, and dive timing markers inside. This is an unusual choice that makes the bezel red busier than a dedicated diver's bezel, but gives the watch genuine dual-function credentials that most watches have to choose between. The issue with the watch is that the crown guards on this model are sharp-edged and aggressive. Worn on a smaller wrist or worn slightly loose, the crown guard digs into the skin. If you have a wrist under 7 inches, try the watch on before you commit. The crown guard that protects the mechanism also creates a mild ergonomic issue that Longines has not addressed across multiple generations of this model. It's worth noting what under 12 millimeters thick for a GMT diver actually means in a competitive context. A Rolex GMT Master 2 with no dive specification is 11.7 millimeters thick. A Tudor Pelagos with the full 500-meter dive rating is 15 millimeters thick. Longines built a 300-meter diver with a GMT complication and kept it under 12 millimeters. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate engineering choice that makes the watch significantly more wearable than almost any comparable diver with a complication. Can the next watch be better? Watch 7 Legend Diver, 39 millimeters. No date, $3,200 to $3,550. In 1959, Longines built a dive watch with a case so clever it was patented. The supercompressor case used water pressure as a closing mechanism. As you dive deeper, the increasing water pressure pushed the seals tighter, making the watch more watertight the further down you went. It was the inverse of how most things work. More pressure, better seal. The watch protected itself. The modern Legend Diver 39 millimeters revives the internal bezel from the supercompressor design. On most dive watches, the timing bezel sits on the outside of the case and rotates by hand or by gripping the external edge. On the Legend Diver, the bezel is inside the crystal. You rotate it using the crown at the 2 o'clock position. This keeps the bezel safe from accidental bumping and gives the dial a distinctive, clean look that cannot be confused with any other watch in the market. The 2026 version at 39 millimeters without a date window is the most important product decision Longines has made with this model in years. The 42 millimeter version had lug overhang issues. The watch extended beyond the edge of most wrists. The date window disturbed the dial symmetry. Both are gone. What remains is a watch that looks exactly like what it should be. a 60s-inspired diver in the right size with an internal bezel that tells a story. What you will have to do is practice using the internal bezel. You have to adapt to adjusting it with wet hands, which is when you most need to adjust a dive timing bezel, is more difficult than an external bezel. The mechanism works. The ergonomics are not designed for underwater use. For a watch that looks like a serious diver and has the ISO certification to back it up, the primary control is harder to use in the environment where diving watches are actually used. That said, for 95% of people who own this watch, you will never use it underwater. The Legend Diver's internal bezel is a design choice that creates beauty and uniqueness on the wrist and asks you to trade some functional ergonomics you will probably never need. The watch is visually flawless when the internal bezel is set correctly, and setting it at home, on dry land, before you leave for the day, is entirely practical. The list gets even better from here. Watch 6 Spirit Zulu Time 39mm. Steel, ceramic, $3,150 to $3,550. In 1925, Longines built the first wristwatch designed specifically to track Greenwich Mean Time, the universal reference time used for navigation, aviation, and coordination across different longitudes. They called it the Zulu time, referencing the military designation for GMT. 100 years later, this is the watch. The green ceramic bezel version occupies a specific and very pointed position in the market. The Rolex GMT Master 2, in the Sprite configuration, retails for approximately $9,500 and involves a waiting list that can exceed 2 years. The Longines Spirit Zulu Time, in steel with the green ceramic bezel, offers the same fundamental complication, a movement that has been COSC certified, sapphire crystal, and a dial quality that collectors routinely describe as punching above its price class. The 5 stars on the dial deserve their explanation. In Longines' historical factory records, 5 stars on a movement's paperwork indicated it had passed the most stringent possible accuracy testing. What was an internal quality code became, over time, a design signature that persists on the Spirit line. Despite its quality, the lug geometry extends the effective wear size. The watch is nominally 39mm, but the male end links of the bracelet push the lug-to-lug toward 41mm wear. If you are buying this watch specifically for its 39mm footprint, try it on first. Watch 5 Ultra Chron High Frequency Diver, $2,900 to $4,500. In 1968, Longines made a claim that was extraordinary, even by today's standards. They advertised their Ultra Chron diver as accurate to 1 minute per month. To understand why this mattered, you need to know how watch accuracy worked in 1968. The standard mechanical dive watch of the era was considered acceptable if it gained or lost no more than about 15 to 30 seconds per day. 1 minute per month is approximately 2 seconds per day, a precision standard that, in a diver in 1968, was genuinely astonishing. The 2026 Tribute watch beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour of 5 Hz. The standard for Swiss mechanical watches is 28,800 vibrations per hour. The higher frequency means the seconds hand moves in smaller, more frequent increments, creating a smoother sweep. More importantly, it means the movement is less affected by shock and gravitational position changes, exactly the conditions a diver experiences. This movement carries both COSC chronometer certification and TimeLab certification, 2 independent organizations, both confirming accuracy within -4 to +6 seconds per day. Double certification at this price is unusual. Most brands achieve one. Longines achieved both, but the cushion case is a design that polarizes people. It has an industrial quality that is serious and purposeful to some buyers and as ungainly to others. There is no wrong answer. But if you have not tried the Ultra Chron on your wrist, do so before you decide based on photographs alone. However, it has double certification, COSC and TimeLab both, which for the price point is genuinely rare. TimeLab is the independent Geneva-based watchmaking institute that tests beyond COSC's standard battery. Having both certifications on the same movement at this price means Longines submitted the movement to 2 different independent organizations and passed both. That is not marketing. That is a documented testing record available on request. Moving on. Watch 4 Conquest Heritage Central Power Reserve, $3,175 to $4,300. Most power reserve displays on mechanical watches look the same. A hand on a small subdial sweeps between full and empty markings. It works. It is also, frankly, not very interesting to look at. The Conquest Heritage Central Power Reserve does something different. 2 discs in the center of the dial rotate to show the power reserve, not a subdial at the edge, the center of the watch. As the mainspring winds down over the course of the day, the 2 rotating discs change their configuration. The watch's face changes its visual balance throughout the day. A full watch looks different from a watch that is 12 hours from stopping. This was designed for the 70th anniversary of the Conquest line, released in 2024, explicitly reviving a 1954 movement architecture that nobody had attempted to bring back. The Power Reserve display is unique to this movement. You will not find this on any other watch at any price without specifically seeking out vintage references. But the dial can feel chaotic. The date window at 12 o'clock and the 2 central discs create a lot of visual information in a small space. Traditional dial design philosophy says the fewer elements on a dial, the more elegant it looks. This watch has prioritized mechanical interest over visual restraint. Whether that is the right trade-off is genuinely a matter of taste. The story of how this next watch was rediscovered is genuinely worth telling. Watch 3 Avigation Big Eye, titanium, blue, $3,950 to $4,400. Longines has one of the most comprehensive watchmaking archives in the world. They have documented records of movements, watches, and prototypes going back to the 19th century. And in 2020, they were shown a photograph by a private collector of a prototype Longines chronograph from the 30s that was not in their archives. They had no record of it. It had existed, apparently, without ever entering the official documentation. The Big Eye chronograph you see in this catalog is Longines' response to that discovery. A watch built around an oversized subsidiary seconds register at 3 o'clock. The Big Eye is not a styling choice. It was the original design logic. Pilots wearing thick gloves in open cockpits needed a seconds register large enough to read while wearing insulated equipment. The subdial is big because the gloves were thick. The petroleum blue dial, the column wheel chronograph mechanism, and the titanium case together produce a watch that won the GPHG Revival Prize. This is the watch industry's equivalent of an Oscar for Best Historical Tribute. However, 30 meters of water resistance is not worth celebrating. This watch looks like it should go in the ocean. It should not. Despite the aviation tool watch heritage, this is a watch that should be kept away from water beyond hand washing. But consider the context. The original prototype this watch was based on had no water resistance specification at all. It was built for open cockpit aircraft, not submarines. The 30-meter rating is honest about what the watch is. A precision aviation chronograph that belongs on your wrist in a cockpit or at a desk, not 50 feet below the surface of the sea. The GPHG Revival Prize it won confirms that the watch community understood this correctly. The watch community also understands this next watch correctly. Watch 2 Spirit Flyback Chronograph, steel $5,000 to $5,500. Longines invented the flyback chronograph. Not inspired by it, not paid tribute to it. Invented it. The mechanism was patented in 1936. A standard chronograph requires 3 actions to reset and restart timing. Stop, reset, start. A flyback requires 1. Press the reset button and the hands fly back to 0 and immediately restart. In one press. The mechanism was designed for aviation, specifically for navigators who needed to time sequential legs of a flight without the pause that 3-action timing required. In the time it takes to press 3 buttons, you can overshoot a waypoint, the L791. 4 movement inside this watch is COSC certified and uses a silicon balance spring. Silicon is non-magnetic, does not expand or contract with temperature changes the way metal springs do, and requires no lubrication. This means the intervals between services are longer. It is a better material for this function than the traditional components it replaces. Longines uses it in a watch with this price point. Switzerland uses silicon balance springs in movements that cost 10 times that. It does have a flaw that can't be ignored. It is 17 millimeters thick. This watch is a brick. It sits high on the wrist. It will not go under most standard dress shirt cuffs. On a more casual sleeve, a thick flannel, a chunky knitwear, any sleeve that has genuine depth, it disappears. On a tailored dress shirt, it creates a visible lump. Know before you buy whether the watches you wear go under sleeves. Here is what makes the thickness worth accepting for the right buyer. At $4,550, there is no other flyback chronograph in production from a Swiss brand with this movement quality at this price. The next comparable flyback from any other Swiss manufacturer, IWC, Breitling, Tag Heuer at the top of their range, starts between $8,000 and $12,000. Longines is not a cheaper version of a Breitling flyback. It is the same category of object for roughly half the price of the cheapest credible alternative. Now, the final watch. Let's get it. Watch 1 Spirit Zulu Time, 39 millimeters. Titane, $4,850. In 1925, Longines built the first wristwatch, specifically designed to track Greenwich Mean Time. In 2025, 100 years later, Longines released the titanium Spirit Zulu Time as the culmination of that century of GMT development. The timing is deliberate. The watch earns it. The movement, the L844, 4, is what the watch community calls a true or flyer GMT. There are two types of GMT mechanisms. The cheaper type, a collar GMT, moves the local hour hand in full 1-hour jumps, but requires that you stop the watch to set it. The true GMT moves the local hour hand independently of the minute hand, in 1-hour increments without stopping the watch. You can change time zones on your wrist in real time, mid-flight, without any disruption to the movement. The L844, 4, is a true GMT. The case is Grade 5 titanium, the aerospace alloy, not the softer Grade 2. This specific titanium is 40% lighter than stainless steel of the same volume and significantly more scratch-resistant. On a daily driver that you intend to wear for years without care, Grade 5 titanium is the honest choice. It will look better for longer without requiring your attention. Compare this to the competition at the same price. A true flyer, GMT in a Swiss brand with COSC certification, Grade 5 titanium case, sapphire crystal with anti-reflective treatment. If you're looking at this from Tudor, Omega, or IWC, you're looking at a watch in the $6,000 to $10,000 range. Longines delivers the same functional and material package for $4,850. The honest flaw, the lug overhang. The male end links of the bracelet extend the effective lug-to-lug to approximately 41 millimeters on a nominally 39 millimeter case. The watch wears slightly larger than the specification suggests. This is a known issue in the Longines community and worth trying on rather than deciding from a measurement alone. The hook that earns its place at the end, the letter Z in the NATO phonetic alphabet, is Zulu. Z stands for 0. The 0 meridian runs through Greenwich, England. Zulu time is Greenwich Mean Time, the reference that all global aviation, navigation, and coordination has used for over a century. Every time you look at the Zulu time, you are looking at the standard by which the world measures itself. Longines has been building watches to that standard since 1925. This is the most precise expression of it they have ever produced. One more thing about titanium that most buyers don't know until they experience it. Stainless steel watches develop a specific kind of wear over years. Minor surface scratches accumulate into a softening of the polished surfaces, a gradual blending of brush and polish that experienced collectors call honest wear. Grade 5 titanium develops the same wear more slowly, because the hardness of the alloy resists the scratching that produces it. A Grade 5 titanium watch worn daily for 5 years looks closer to the day it was bought than the equivalent steel watch. If you intend to keep this watch for the long term, the titanium choice compounds its value over time. 14 watches, and the pattern across all 14 is the same. Longines takes a technical specification that other brands use to justify high prices and delivers it at a price that requires no extraordinary commitment. The forensic flaws are real in every case. The Hydro Conquest loses resale value. The flyback won't fit under a shirt sleeve. The The Master Collection Moon Phase can't go in the rain. The Legend Diver's bezel is harder to use with wet hands than it should be. These are not reasons to avoid the watches, they're reasons to choose the right one for what you actually do. The question is not whether Longines makes good watches. They demonstrably do. The question is which one fits what you need. 14 options, clearly explained. Now you know enough to answer that. Which of these Longines watches would you be getting? Or do you have one already? Let me know in the comments, and hit like and subscribe.